Sleepy Sheepy here. Today we're going to be looking at a two-handed Urumi build. So we will be able to switch over to the one-handed moveset occasionally, but the benefit of the two-handed moveset is you get this fully charged R2 that follows up into a true combo with the light attack. So that's going to be very strong, especially on the Keen Urumi, which gets S scaling and dexterity, and we're going to boost that further, that charged attack, with the Axe Talisman. We also have the Millicent's Prosthesis to further boost our dexterity since we do get that S scaling, and that's going to bring us up to 59 dex in total. We also have 20 strength, 30 endurance, and 60 vigor, which is fairly standard for a 125 build. And then we'll also have the option to boost our AR a little bit further with the Mushroom Crown, so we can put Rot Grease on the Keen Urumi, or we can use the offhand Ant Spur Rapier if we want to, and just get some kind of cheeky pokes in with the Poison Infused, and also, base Rot buildup that comes with the Ant Spur Rapier. So not everybody is going to want to poise count, so I think it's most important to understand which of these attacks are going to do over 100 poise damage, which is a pretty common breakpoint. Obviously, if you see somebody in full Bull Goat, you're going to be wanting to go for either the jumping R2 or the fully charged R2. Those two are both going to deliver over 133 poise damage, which is max poise damage. And then you also have over 100 poise damage when it comes to the jumping light attack, which is going to be 105, and then also the running R2 is going to be 120 poise damage. So those options are all very strong, and really what I recommend leaning on, unless you're poise counting. So for the poise counting options, or if you just want to get a little chip damage and you know that your opponent is out of range to punish you, the crouching light attack is going to come out very, very quickly and has a lot of range. So you can even wave dash with this, and that can be a good option to just, catch your opponent for a last bit of HP. That's definitely been extremely helpful for me when using this. And then just regular light attacks also come out very quickly, and those are going to be doing 71 poise damage. So 2 hits with the light attack are going to be a great option for poise breaking your opponent. Even if you hit a phantom hit with 1, then you know your next light attack is going to poise break. So definitely some great options there, and that makes this weapon go from kind of not viable to really actually viable in invasions as well as duels. That pretty much covers everything that I wanted to say about the two-handed moveset for the Urumi. You'll also note that I am just kind of periodically being sent over to the left side of my screen. I am suffering from stick drift, so I should be getting a new controller at some point in the near future, but I hope you can just kind of ignore that. If you wouldn't mind considering subscribing, I'd definitely appreciate it. And yeah, that's all I've got to say, so let's go ahead and take a look at the invasions and duels. Alright, so jumping into our first invasion, we're going to have what starts as a 2v1, and we're going to be trying to utilize the weird hitbox associated with the Urumi, as well as our knowledge of when the poise breaks are going to happen. So one thing we'll be able to note is that with the fully charged heavy, which is a great turn and burn, we're going to be able to stun both of our opponents at the same time and deliver that follow-up true combo hit at the same time on both of our opponents. So here we see that in action. We hit over 1,200 damage on the Phantom and nearly kill them. There's one kind of stun that we get from behind, just from the from the host rather, and that's going to not allow us to get the very last bit of chip damage on the Phantom that was necessary. And we also are going to be running Beast Roar, which is great when you do kind of end up in that situation where you land the full true combo and the opponent is almost dead, but they are now out of range. Sometimes with Beast Roar, you'll be able to catch them as they run away. So that's going to be a very strong option, especially with the dexterity scaling that Beast Roar gets. And we're running 60 dex. It's very strong overall. So here I meant to lock on to the Phantom, accidentally locked onto the host, so the Beast Roar didn't quite make it. And it is going to be a good anti-air option, but we do actually have to be able to hit that. So we accidentally fall off, and we begin pressuring the blue, who's having a hard time with the PvE. The Phantom also does come down, and that was definitely a poor choice. And the host is kind of chilling on top of this little building here, so we're going to try to do our best to get them down. It's worth noting that the Golem arrows do go through kind of walls and floors, so oftentimes you can use the AoE of the Golem arrow to push your opponent in a direction that they may not want to go, but is beneficial for you. And then they get one of the worst frame traps that I've seen in a long time, where they just have nowhere to go. There's a bunch of PvE, and we have to, kind of deliver that last blow to come out on top. So this next invasion is going to be in the Limgrave Lakes area, And we have one player that's, you know, just going for PvE with Waves of Gold, not really too much to note, and we're also buffing our Urumi with the Lightning Grease since we are in water, so that's going to be a very strong option. But here, as we're trying to go for the last couple hits with just our offhand Antspur Rapier, which is great for chip damage, we have just too much going on. You can see, you know, all the Waves of Gold coming in. We also have projectiles coming from the host, so we need to regroup. And at this point, it's going to be very prudent to deliver a lot of damage very fast and very aggressively. So this is going to be one of those moments where I kind of adjust with the best weapon for the job. So I have a halberd on hand, particularly the Guardian Sword Spear, which I'm very familiar with after some of my previous weapon showcases, and I feel like this is going to be a much better pressuring tool than the whip would be. And we also have a true combo with the jumping light attack, which is going to be perfect for punishing Waves of Gold. So as this Phantom comes in to kind of avoid hitting the wall with Waves of Gold, they do get caught with the true combo, and then we just see consistent aggression from the other Phantom. So obviously this is an Urumi showcase, but the best weapon for the job in this case was probably the halberd, and given the numbers of Waves of Gold we see, it's better to, you know, kind of deliver those extra damage with the kind of the pokey weapon rather than the Urumi. But we do get a nice hard swap over to the Urumi and finish off that opponent there. This next invasion is going to be kind of madness. So this one, you know, it starts out with Waves of Gold. We also are going to be getting hit with Taker's Flame, and then we have a host running a Great Bow from behind. There's just a lot going on, and this invasion really starts off on the back foot, and we're trying to jump up onto that little ledge there. We get caught out of the air with the Waves of Gold weapon, the Sacred Blade. No, that's not right. I'm spacing on the name, but there's a lot of stuff coming our way, and really the best option is to try to go into a place where you don't think you'll be followed. So switching over to a weapon with Bloodhound Step will allow you to traverse this area much more quickly than any other way, and we can just use a Ballast. So we didn't really take any damage in that process of escape, and now we give the host and the Phantoms a decision to make. Do they want to go into the rot area that's, you know, gonna force you to be very slow, or do they want to like stay back and just try to hit me with ranged attacks? Fortunately, I do have a Great Bow on hand, so I can deliver some of that chip damage and also kind of taunt them forward. They're kind of forced into the position where they need to make the decision about whether they want to progress through the level or if they want to stay back and be patient. And most times when you have a group of three, not all three of them will want to be patient. So we're going to kind of use that psychology to our advantage, and as we can see, the host is already kind of moving full steam ahead, which puts the Phantoms in a very awkward position because they either have to protect the host and move forward and, you know, kind of risk getting hit by me, or risk the host getting killed. So here we go for the classic Rain of Arrows well unlocked, which puts a nice hit around your body. And I meant to switch over to the Urumi, but my inventory was set up kind of incorrectly, so I didn't have time to kind of make the second swap, so I just kind of went with the heavy thrusting sword, and that was going to be enough to take care of that Phantom. And now we just have one Phantom left, and the host is over by the Site of Grace at the kind of the drainage area. So we're going to continue to pressure the Phantom here with the Great Bow and just, you know, see how many times we can hit them, and also try to knock them into the rot. And because they rolled through the rot, they did get the kind of continuous buildup, and the rot is going to be enough to kill them. So I kind of thought I was at the easy point of this invasion now, but the kind of story isn't over. I wasn't sure where the host was. I couldn't see them, and then kind of when I started to slow down and look around, they hit me with a jumping attack, and they are running the dual Radon swords, so we do need to be worried about getting poise damage coming our way through that, and just the hyper armor that has. So we can see that we took a just neutral light attack with the two-handed moveset, and here we can see how useful that weird hitbox of the fully charged R2 is. The blue was totally behind me, and they still got hit because they were on my left side. So I run off into a much easier area to kind of funnel everybody in. I don't need to worry about kind of getting hit from behind with the claws while I'm trying to go for the host, or, you know, get hit with jumping attacks from the host while I'm going for the blue. And here I, you know, am just trying to poise break this opponent. I can see that they're running very low poise, so I think that I'll be able to hit them as they end their Bloodhound Step, but they end up just Bloodhound Stepping off the edge. So another benefit of kind of moving over to that area. And we're going to see that again as another blue does spawn into the world here. One recommendation that I have is to have a soft swap over to a Misericord. And that's going to be great if you have the opportunity to deliver a crit. So you can roll and then switch over to your soft swap Urumi, or not Urumi, Misericord, and then you'll usually have time to deliver a backstab or something that you'd normally go for a rolling backstab. So I definitely recommend giving that a try. And here we can just see how powerful the Urumi is when you maintain priority and the player you're playing against is, you know, not kind of giving you space. We're able to hit them with the fully charged R2, the true combo into the light attack, the beast roar, and then another light attack to finish them off. And now finally we get just the one-on-one with the host that we had been looking for, and we get the final blow with the beast roar for 8 damage. So that was a really fun invasion, and just one that I was happy to kind of utilize a different area of the environment and just kind of, you know, make the best of the poisonous swamp as well as the kind of like ledge next to the tree, and really just try to incorporate everything that I have, all the tools in my belt as an invader. So next up we have a 2v1, or at least it starts that way, and the player with Mohg's Spear comes very close to death there at the beginning, but the added pressure from the host was enough to kind of save their life. And there were a couple critical moments here where what I thought would be a roll catch for the last bit of HP on that Phantom, it just didn't deliver. So I'm not sure if there was a little bit of latency with me in that Phantom, but what I thought looked like correct timing, you know, the connection didn't happen. So we are throwing some frost pots at this Phantom here. They don't have a ton of health, but the host is doing a very good job of just kind of covering them at very critical moments. So there was a moment I thought the roll catch timing was correct. However, they still had the iframes, so we do need to back off, and the Phantom continues to kind of be able to pressure with the Mohg's Spear. Now, rolling down into this area here was definitely a good idea. There was some pretty strong PvE that got involved. I could have definitely taken a moment to get in a better situation to heal. Obviously, it's not ideal to get punished with that Estus, but it's, you know, something that absolutely does happen, and you don't always have the kind of best environment situation that allows you to kind of get off scot-free. So if you're ever running through a tunnel like this, a quick swap over to the Stormhawk Axe is going to be a great option for a turn and burn. Those really narrow tunnels are just like the best case scenario for a turn and burn, especially when it's not big enough for 2 people to pass through, because the people in the back can force the other players either forward or in the same spot. So we're able to get both of those players just with a quick turn and burn, and now we begin chasing down the host. As we kind of saw earlier with some of those critical moments, the whip wasn't the best way to chase down a player. I think the crouching light attack is going to be your best option with the whip moveset, but switching over to something like a heavy thrusting sword is going to be a much stronger way to kind of continuously pressure an opponent that's playing really passively or just running away continuously. So we do get back caught up to them. We also sent the elevator back up, which meant that the host couldn't kind of, you know, do that cheeky go on the elevator, then jump off the elevator type thing, which was a little bit of a problem. And then we do have I believe it was the same blue from earlier, and this time they're going to be utilizing their Bloodhound Step a little bit more liberally than the last time they showed up in the world. And for that reason, we switch over to the Antspur Rapier, because we want to be able to, you know, have a tool that's going to deliver damage extremely quickly. So the neutral light attack on in the Urumi is going to be faster than most other weapons, or not the Urumi, the Antspur Rapier. And just being able to time that with the end of a Bloodhound Step, especially on a low poise opponent, it's going to be really kind of the right tool for the job. So more and more these days I've been trying to just kind of utilize what I think is correct rather than limit myself to just kind of the main weapon of the showcase. If y'all have any opinions about that, definitely let me know. But I think, you know, it's good to have kind of a home base weapon that you want to use for the majority of situations. But when you feel like, you know, the weapon you're using isn't correct, this has been kind of a realization that's taken me a long time to come to, because in Dark Souls 3 you could kind of get away with using any weapon for any situation. I mean, it wasn't always like the most correct, but in Elden Ring, with the damage output and just kind of the different play styles, builds are going to be more important than I think other previous Souls games. And so being able to kind of use all the different elements of a build and use it to their maximum capacity, you're just going to find more success with that. So here we do finally get the poison proc and then switch over to the Urumi for the finish. And we can see that the Urumi was very helpful in delivering gradual chip damage, and it almost got the Phantom multiple times throughout that invasion. But, you know, understanding that a turn and burn with a Stormhawk axe is going to be much more effective than gradual chip damage is, you know, important. And when you are starting to get overwhelmed with other players, you know, coming into the world and being in small spaces, like, you need to punish that aggression somehow. And you can do it multiple times with multiple turn and burns, but if you think you're going to take too much damage in the process, then, you know, one-shotting your opponent is probably the way to go. So these are just kind of some of the things I've been thinking about as an invader, and some of the, you know, different approaches you can have. So obviously this was a very quick 2v1, and we can see the Urumi was more than enough to kind of do the job correctly, and that's going to be fantastic. But for some invasions, like the range isn't going to be enough, the burst damage isn't going to be enough, or just kind of the slowness of the weapon isn't going to be enough. The range is honestly pretty good, but, you know, it doesn't have the range of a great bow or something. So just kind of knowing the weaknesses of the tool that you're using is going to be important. And we saw in the earlier invasion where I switched to the halberd, the poise break on the running light attack was extremely helpful for chase down. So here again, we can see we have a group that's using a lot of different magic spam, and being able to get that turn and burn, knowing that we're in water, you know, we're really boosting that electric damage or the lightning damage associated with the Stormhawk axe, because their damage negation in water for lightning is lower. So again, kind of just right tool for the job type situation. And then we can switch back to the Urumi, you know, utilize it in a one-on-one and take down a player with Vike Spear, which is admittedly like a strong weapon. So, you know, in those moments you can absolutely outskill your opponents. But, you know, this has been kind of a rant about the way I've been invading more often. And I think for players looking for more success with different types of builds, just knowing, you know, what other tools you can incorporate is important, and knowing when to use them is also important, because you can be stubborn like I've been for a long period of time with this game and just kind of stick to one thing, or you can really become more of a dynamic player, and with that, a more successful player, I think. So with this invasion, we did get some baits and finally forced our opponents to kind of fall down that hole. One player did not fall down the hole with the other one, so we're able to kind of use that isolation of that moment to run after that player and hit them just a couple times. They kept trying to attack out of stun, but the Urumi is too fast for that, and we're able to just kind of hit them multiple times and come out with the W. Now, it became kind of a scary invasion where we have two players that both are running Moonveil. So a kind of classic setup that can absolutely melt you. And we're going to be trying to use the walls and the hallways to block those long range Moonveil attacks, and also get some turn and burns with the fully charged attack. And one thing that's nice about the Urumi is that it does go through walls very easily, so you won't get, you know, you will be able to kind of get some weird hitbox attacks that normally might get stopped on a weapon that has more of a traditional swing to it. So we got kind of backed into a corner that we didn't want to be in, so we just kind of head back the way we came. We use a little bit of Spark Aromatic, which I've been trying to some success, and it's definitely better for lower poise opponents. It doesn't guarantee a poise break, so that's just kind of important to realize. And here we go for one sleep pot, which is going to be a great option because it's going to lower their FP, and it also puts us in a position to deliver the fully charged heavy and the true combo. And then at this point, the other invader, or the other Phantom, just gives up. So we come out with the W there. And moving on, we have the last invasion of the showcase. And I just like including these because they kind of crack me up. So we have elevator shenanigans, as you might have guessed from this scenario. So we switch over to something with Endure, which is a great option and something that everybody should have on hand. And here we just get a rolling backstab on the player that was going for that meteor attack. We don't quite kill them, but we use Endure again just so we can continue to pressure. And here, just a couple of light attacks with the Music Record is going to be enough, as the Phantom there is pretty much frame trapped in that one spot. And we do get a nice visual into the bravery of the host here as they disconnect and we move on. Up next, we're going to have the duel portion of the showcase, and here we have a player that's also rocking the Mushroom Crown, and they go for a couple buffs, definitely a buff enjoyer, so they use Black Flame's protection, and then Golden Epitaph, and then the extra buff with the Grafted Blade that gives you like 5 points and a whole bunch of different stats. So I decide to eat a little bit of boiled crab since that's kind of the buff that I have on hand. I probably could have gone for one of the greases or something, but the just kind of Urumi as well as Beast Roar was going to be my general approach. You know, I don't love to run a ton of buffs in the arena, but they are obviously a helpful tool to have available to you. So we're really just trying to space this opponent. They're going for kind of some start and stops, but the stops that they're going for are still within range of the Urumi, so it's not going to be something that they're going to be able to punish, and if they don't react fast enough, it's actually going to be something that I'm going to be able to punish. So they feel like the Bloodhound Fang is not working out, so they switch over to the Commander standards, but we're able to land a jumping attack that does quite a bit of damage, and then we're almost going to flawless them, but unfortunately we do take a trade here, and they're down to quite a bit of health, or they've lost quite a bit of health at this point, despite kind of the different buffs like Black Flame protection and whatnot. So we're going for some Beast Roars, just get that final bit of HP, but just a light attack is going to come out fast enough and have enough range for us to finish that opponent. Next up, we're going to have a player that's running Morgoth's Curved Sword with a bleed build, so definitely scary, but here we can see they're running some Bulgo, but we still get the Poise Break with that running heavy attack, so a very strong option there, and it's just going to be one that I used so much during the arenas. I really like that running heavy attack, and it has a phenomenal range. So one thing to note too, as I ravioli step, is that the two-handed moveset does not have a backstep attack. So the one-handed moveset does, but the two-handed doesn't for some reason. I feel like they might have just forgotten about it. So don't try to ravioli step with the two-handed whip, but you can if you're just going to one-hand it. So here I was hoping to poise break them out of their Ash of War. It didn't go well, but I was able to get in some key rolls where I rolled the bleed proc and could now begin pressuring. And here we just get a trade with Beast Roar for the final last bit of HP. I feel like that player was just a little bit latent. We can see kind of that looked on my end like it shouldn't have been a trade, like they should have been hit with the damage before their, attack connected, but that's just me. Latency with this game is not anything new. So here we have a player using Bloodhound Step with some great swords. So I'm trying to just kind of time my attacks towards the end of Bloodhound Step. And you will note that we don't get the true combo when players Bloodhound Step away. So that is a way to kind of nullify that true combo there. But the fully charged R2 is going to be great for catching opponents because it does have, two separate hitboxes. So if they Bloodhound Step the first part, it does give you the possibility that they would get hit by the second part. And the tracking on it is pretty good. The vertical tracking on it is actually pretty terrible. So if you do see a player that's running a Urumi, I would say jumping attacks are going to be a really good option. And if you are playing against a player that's running a lot of jumping attacks, it might not be a bad option to go for more jumping attacks yourself with the Urumi. So just worth noting that the hitbox and the vertical tracking is quite poor for this weapon, and I got hit by a lot of jumping attacks when I thought I would knock them out of the air. So this next player is going to be running the Star Fists very aggressively. So when we do see a super aggressive fist player, I always like to, just go for the parry. So we do hard swap over to the parry shield, get that parry, and hard swap over to the Misericord. And we don't actually kill them. And it's a little bit scary because they can do so much damage so fast, and they continue to maintain aggression, but we're able to just get 2 quick swipes with the Misericord and finish them off before they can kill us. So moving on, we have a player with the Great Mace. So this is going to be one where we need to be careful of the hyper armor. The Great Hammer class does have a fair amount of hyper armor, and looking out for trades that will not be beneficial for us is very important. So we do see, one poise break there that was pretty opportune, and then there we can see that hyper armor. So I think that was just a light attack, so it may have just been we didn't poise break our opponent, but it's something to just be very wary of. If you see a Great Hammer, if you see an Ultra Great Sword, those are going to be weapons where you need to be very careful about what kind of trades you go for. And there we can see how the vertical tracking of the fully charged R2 is not going to be very solid, and we're actually going to miss that entirely despite the fact that they were only jumping. So just something to be aware of there. And here we're just kind of getting gradual chip damage, and that's one thing I really liked about the Urumi in the arena, is that the consistent chip damage you can get is so powerful and adds up so fast, especially with the range. So I don't think many people enjoyed playing against the Urumi. I kind of felt bad. I know that it's not a weapon that I always enjoy playing against, but I really did want to give it a try. Shout out to Gus, who suggested this in my Twitch chat. Sorry for not mentioning this earlier, but yeah, Gus was somebody who suggested this build almost in its entirety. So having that suggestion was awesome, and I've really enjoyed kind of playing like this. So it's definitely, I found it to be more viable than I was initially expecting. You know, I've been running CGS as well as halberds a lot, and I was worried that this was going to feel, you know, kind of useless in comparison, but the different options you have available to poise break your opponent really just make this such a good option. And I think you do have an element too that players are pretty unfamiliar with the timing and moveset because you don't see this much. So you do have that surprise element too. I think if you were playing against a really good player, they would be able to kind of predict most of your moves and reaction roll most of your moves as well. So it would become a little bit nerfed, but having that kind of element of surprise is going to be huge. So there we can just see players trying to outspace it, but kind of making incorrect judgments about that, which is so easy to do, especially if you have any latency too. The timing is a little bit difficult with the whip, but the the range, if you're getting any phantom range, it can be kind of absurd. So next up we have a player just running an axe, which, you don't see that often. I played this player a whole bunch of times and really just enjoyed our fights. They had the potential to vortex with this setup. So I believe it was like a jumping attack into a ravioli step roll catch into maybe just a couple light attacks. So there was definitely potential there with the axe. I love to see it, but we were able to kind of catch them with the fully charged R2 and finish that off. As always, if you made it this far, I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all the support. And if you have any suggestions for future builds, I'd love to hear it, so feel free to let me know in the comments. But yeah, that's all I've got, and I hope you have a good one.